Hello, everybody. Nancy Forrester here, the founder and executive director of Canada's National EFT Training Institute. And my pleasure today to spend a little time with Dr. Bob Schwarz, who is a licensed psychologist in the States, and he's also the executive director of ACEP, the Association for Comprehensive Energy Psychology. And Bob's written a couple of books on trauma, and I'm so grateful that you've taken your time out of your busy day to spend a little bit in our EFTUnplugged conversation. So Bob, would just give us a little bit about your background, and specifically, how did you get into this field of energy psychology and EFT?
Well, I started off in grad school. I wasn't interested in EFT. I didn't know about it at the time, but I was always looking for better tools, better ways to communicate. And I got interested in Ericksonian hypnosis pretty early on. So ironically, I actually went to a conference, a 3-day workshop with Jeff Zeig, who's the executive director of the Erickson organization. And I ended up being the subject, for the 3-day conference, because I like to learn from the inside. And you'll never guess what the problem I had was.
Oh, do tell.
It was stage fright. About playing music, as a matter of fact. So so I knew, so in front of 150 people, I said, what's your problem? Stage fright. So of course I went up and basically cured me of the stage fright, as a matter of fact. So, and I was, fascinated about this whole idea of, how to communicate more effectively. So I was an Ericksonian person for a long time, or an NLP. And so that's really, for me, it's about how to communicate more effectively with clients and get them to wherever they need to go. Great. So that's fine. And then, back in the 90s, then you start hearing this stuff about thought field therapy, because EFT wasn't even born yet. And all these claims and I was like, yeah, right.
Yeah.
I didn't really believe it, and it seemed a bit much, and tapping on meridian points. What the? Anyway, but they're making these claims, and then it's involving the body. So I was like, well, okay, it's involving the body. That's kind of interesting. And I ended up going to a workshop at my local Pennsylvania Psychological Association with Fred Gallup. And I took this thing, we did this weird tapping, and oh my God, what the heck, it worked. And, that was weird. And so then, okay, now you go take a 2-day training, another 2-day training. Then it was like basically going down the rabbit hole. Once you start, there's energy, there's feels, and it was just like, okay. And so I did that for a while, and yeah, I was pretty hooked, actually. And then I ran a training company for a while. We did all this stuff with trauma, and I was all into trauma. And we actually gave, I was APA approved, and we actually gave APA approved credit for thought field therapy before they banned it. So, yeah. So that's how I sort of got into it. It was one step. It's sort of one step at a time. I think that's how people get it. They have an experience. But to me, they're almost always looking for something a little bit more. What do I do other than just talk? And the other thing about, because I think it's relevant, that I liked about Ericksonian work that is relevant for EFT or TFT or any of the energy psychology approaches is it's a therapy of experience.
Yes.
You're working directly with felt experience. And I've always been attracted to that. And I think most of the therapies out there that are really of interest have that in common. You're working with changing the client's felt experience. It's not just about, you need to stop awfulizing or something.
Yeah, exactly. And it's about the experience in the moment.
Yes.
In the moment. Yeah, and in the relationship with your helping person, right? And and so TFT, focusing, EFT.
But really more in the client. The client, yes, we can talk about that, but it's the client's experience change.
Yes.
And we'll talk about EFT in particular, but like things, there's a process, but the client does something and then they're feeling something changes inside them.
Exactly, which can be tested in that moment to see whether it's actually changed or not. Beautiful. Beautiful. So how did you get through the weirdness factor of this? I remember going to my first level 1 workshop and just, I saw them tapping on their faces and I was like, get me out of here. I do not do this kind of thing. But as you said, I had a profound experience in that workshop, which I couldn't write off, despite all the years of therapy training. So what do you say about this tapping on the meridian points and the...
You mean with clients?
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. It depends. I mean, I'm actually a lot of times there's a setup. So you get clients. Usually, people are in distress. I wait for a moment when they're in distress, or something is going on where they're clearly, not happy. They're anxious. They have some negative state going on, and I usually say, "Would you be interested in feeling better, shifting this, or feeling better?"
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Nobody's going to say no to that.
Yeah, exactly.
And then depending on the situation, I mean, it depends. Sometimes I'll say, have you heard of acupuncture? Have you ever had acupuncture? And then we'll say, if they, we can talk about, we can talk about there's acupuncture points. And in a minute, I'm going to show you this thing we're going to do where we're not going to use needles, but we're going to tap on some acupressure points. That's going to change your experience. Would that be of interest to you?
Yeah.
We can go that way. Or sometimes I just go, I want to do something that's it's going to be a little strange, but it will help you feel better, and it's going to involve you focusing on what's going on for you and then tapping on some acupuncture points that will shift the way your body processes energy and information, and you're going to feel better in a little bit. With that, again, is that okay?
Yeah.
Would you like that result? Because it's the result.
Yeah, beautiful.
It's like sell the result, not the process.
Yeah, exactly.
And again, very few people say no. The only people that really it's only very highly intellectualized, doctor types like me, maybe you, that what is all this? And even then, I usually will say to them, I will answer all of your questions, however, and I'll answer them now if you really want, but it'll be a lot more interesting to you if you have an experience, and then I'll talk about it all you like.
Right.
Would you be willing to have an experience?
Yeah. Yeah.
And most people say yes. And if I see a sense of trepidation or fear, then I'll check it out. So I'm reading them. But there's this is a little like, I really think it's like the thing with the child falls down, skins their knee, and looks up at the parent to see how they should handle this.
Yeah.
So if the therapist is, but if you're calm and you're totally assured, which is one of the things I just love, we'll talk about why do you do this, but I just love the assurance that I get from this, and they feel it. It's a polyvagal thing. It's a vagal nerve. They sense it. It's like, okay, this guy knows what he's confident.
Yeah. There's the relation.
I want that. So because a lot of, especially if it's trauma. Yeah. If someone's in a traumatized state, they just want someone to move in and take care of them. You don't want, if you're bleeding, out. You don't want someone to go, well, I don't know. What do you think? You think I should tie a tourniquet on your arm? You just want someone to move in.
That's right, with that certainty. Well, that certainly was my experience back in the day when I was first exposed to EFT and resisted it like crazy. Like, how can this be working? It was, but I was still resisting at the same time. And that was my experience with clients that I was introducing it to as well. But as I moved through that and then came into those sessions, came into that relationship with that assurance and certainty, then I didn't experience that same kind of resistance.
I also think it's changed now. I think enough people have heard about this stuff from one way or another. I go around teaching, I've taught, and 15 years ago, 10 years I was teaching. How many people, I just teach a trauma workshop, how many people do hypnosis, how many do blah, 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 how many, tapping, nobody raised their hand. Now lots of people raise their hand.
Yeah.
So it's sort of out there. And so I don't even think, I just think it's in the, it's the 100th monkey effect, call it what you will. It's just out in the field. It's just less.
Yeah, and really being led by that groundswell of people who are looking for their helping practitioners to be trained in this modality. It's a common question that I get every day is, refer me to someone who's taken training with you in EFT.
Right.
Yeah. So how do you actually personally and then professionally use EFT? And of course, I'd love it if you could bring some talk about your trauma background and how you use it specifically there.
Well, I mean, personally, if let's see, I mean, there are a few ways. I mean, I often tell the story about if I get upset, if I have a fight with my spouse or something, I need to calm down. That's the time I'll do it. I've certainly used it. I've gone through, done some, personal peace procedures and say something that upsets me. Um, um, so I've done that. I recently kind of was going through something and had somebody help me out. I think I blogged about it or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was I kind of got into this thing and we just tapped through it and, yeah, it was great. It calmed down and like the whole thing sort of shifted and it made a big difference. So,
Yeah.
So for myself, that's how I do it. I probably could do more. I suspect.
Always, yeah.
Yeah. And then I'm sorry. So what else did you?
Well, then, just a general overview of how you use this with your clients.
With clients. Yeah. One other thing I do with it, by the way, is when I'm always when I'm working with clients and they're tapping, I'm tapping.
Yeah.
And I always find that I'm always noting how that there's a certain so I'm getting that that it helps. It's good self-care when you're with clients.
Absolutely.
Gosh, with client, I mean, a lot of stuff. I've done a lot of work with trauma over the years, and I still do work with trauma, and there's just a million examples. I'll tell you one that comes to mind. Wasn't a client. It was someone I did a workshop. I was in a demonstration at a workshop, and I was going to be demonstrating the tell the story technique. That's what I was going to be demonstrating. And I said, who has a problem? People raise their hand. Well, what's your problem? So this woman raises her hand and says, well, her child had, she walked in on his house or something, and he had shot himself.
Oh.
And she said, I can't even talk. If I even just go into a little, I've done EMDR, I've done this, I've done that. I go right to 10. So, well, there goes. We're not doing tell the story then on that, at least not right away. But actually I tell this story because here I am, it's a room of 30 people, and I'm saying, okay, I'll work with you. And I'm looking around the room, and I can see everybody, like, their eyeballs are bugging out of their head. Like, are you out of your mind?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we just really did in this particular case, it was just a really slow,
Sneaking up. Is that
no, it was the other one.
Tearless trauma.
Tearless trauma. Thank you. Tearless trauma technique.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we just really put it. And so long story short, within 20 minutes, within 15 minutes, it's like down to a 3 or a 4 in the box. And then I'm thinking, you know what? I'm willing to call it. I said, I'm just willing to call it a day for that. And call it a success.
Yeah.
But and feel good about it. But I said, do you want to stop here? And I still didn't want to. She said, no, I want to go for it. She wanted to do the full tell the story technique. Who might argue? So we did this thing, and the whole, and by the end of it, she could run the story, and you sit there and you just go, oh my God, how cool is that? And what was interesting, and we talk about that, and I know you talk about your training, is that going slow. And one of the things I like about EFT in particular, which I actually talk about. I have this chapter coming out on polyvagal theory and on EFT. Is that when you go through a story very slowly, we really make sure that the chunk size is small, so the person never gets too hot.
Yeah. And
you're always, finding ways to keep it so they don't go into abreaction. They keep out of abreaction.
Mm-hmm.
And this person had other training, and no one was able to do that because they weren't able to go. Well, I don't know. They weren't able to do it, but we could. We have techniques that know how to do it.
Yeah, that idea of just titrating the dose appropriately to what that nervous system can handle in that moment. Yeah, and adjusting accordingly.
So that's one story, and another story that quickly comes to mind. Was another demonstration at a workshop. But the woman had woke up. Her daughter was dating this terrible guy. The woman helps break them up and helps the daughter kick the guy out. The guy ends up in this woman who's a military person, ends up breaking into her house, and she wakes up and he's in the room with a knife, ostensibly going to kill her.
Yeah.
And her whole story was this was a trauma story, and that she felt badly about herself, and it was just, this victim story. We did what we did. But here's the thing that's interesting. What really happened, in the end of the day, what really happened was she disarmed the guy, took the knife away, and she won the day. That's what really happened.
Right.
But that wasn't the narrative.
Yeah.
And so by just going through this procedure of releasing the changing how it's stored in her mind, in the mind and body, the story and the narrative completely changes. I mean, she goes back to, now it's a story. Now she has an experience of overcoming and triumph. Which was already there, which was actually a closer representation to what really happened. But because she had this, and I've seen that happen again and again. I know you're in Canada, so there are a lot of narrative folks up in Canada.
Yes.
And I've trained with them, and so I've actually had these conversations with them about, and they like this stuff about how EFT actually fits really well with narrative because they don't have a clue about what to do with the body. And so it's lovely to do energy first, and then you do your narrative work at the end when the thing is changed around.
Yes, beautiful. Yes, there's the thing about EFT is it just integrates so seamlessly with so many different techniques. This is not about throwing out everything that we knew before.
It can, if you can, yeah.
Yeah.
Right. It depends how if the therapist wants to, and we like to teach it that way. I know that it's a useful way of working with someone that can be integrated with,
with so many things.
Name your favorite therapy.
Yeah. Okay. So last question. So what is it in a nutshell? What is it in a nutshell that has you be an advocate for EFT energy psychology?
Well, it's funny because in a certain way, I would argue that I'm not. Because what I really advocate for, what I'm really interested in is clients getting better and having these resourceful states, right? Absolutely. That's what I want. And whatever gives me, if I found something better, I'd drop it in a second.
Absolutely.
And I know other things as well, but but the bottom line is this is such a wonderful tool to get to that place. And it helps process information. It helps process stuff that's stuck in the body. We're stuck in the body mind. Gary talks about, it's the energy, but we've sort of at ACEP, we've sort of updated it a little bit and focused on Dan Siegel's work. And so it's not just the energy, it's energy and information.
Right.
So energy and information is stored in the mind, in some mind and body in some way that usually isn't helpful. Because if you have a traumatic event, it's not the event that's the problem.
Right.
If it was the event that was the problem, you can never fix it. Exactly. It's how it's stored.
Yeah.
And so EFT and TFT and all these approaches are just fabulous ways to shift that energy in a way that makes it so that the flow of information and energy is no longer distorted, and we move back to what Dan Siegel calls the river of integration.
Yes.
Integrated. And I love it because I get to learn this tool. Yeah. These are relatively simple tools. You do have to know, but once you learn them, then you get to be really present with the person.
Yes.
And Imagine that's when the kind of the cool stuff happens. And so it's sort of like, it gives me this sense of, I don't have to worry. And we talk about that a lot. Like, you don't have to worry.
Right.
When I've trained people over the years, I used to see people sort of, okay, we're going to work on the trauma now. And people sort of, what? And it's like, no, we can handle it. You can handle it.
Yeah.
And that brings this sort of interpersonal connection and confidence, that, presence.
Yeah.
That, and then the presence, supercharges the energy work, and the energy work supercharges the presence. And it's just
beautiful.
So,
So the flow of information in the
yeah,
relationship
yeah,
is being optimized as well. Yeah.
right in that moment. You may never see that person again, but in that moment, it's a heck of a relationship.
Yeah. Beautiful. And that's where the healing and the growth happens, right in that moment.
Right in that moment. Yeah. And that's a gift. And I'm always, it's true. After 20 years, I'm still blown away.
Absolutely. I say that too. It's like there's not a day that goes by that I'm not in awe of what's possible for human beings, and what this simple to learn technique can actually bring to people.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't solve everything, but at the right time in the right place.
Yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Bob. I do appreciate your time so much. I know how busy you are, and everything that's going on at ACEP. So much appreciated everything that you do there, and for coming today and sharing your thoughts with us. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.